The U.S. government is setting up a ministry of truth. Moderna wants to jab babies, and President Biden is seeking to bankrupt our country even more than it already is. We'll cover that and more on today's Crisis Weekly Wrap-Up. Today is April 29th, 2022, and I'm Eric Sammons. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today in the news is this Ministry of Truth. Now, to be honest, there is no organization going to be called the Ministry of Truth. However, in its essence, that's what's happening. What happened is the Department of Homeland Security is setting up a new disinformation governance board, to coordinate countering misinformation related to Homeland Security, focused specifically on irregular migration and Russia. Nina Jankowicz will head the board as executive director. Now, if you know anything about Miss Jankowicz, she is basically what is called a Karen. And she is, for example, she thought the Hunter Biden laptop story was disinformation, likely disinformation by Russians to affect the election in 2020. And of course, now we know that's not true. It had nothing to do with the Russians, and it actually was true. And so this is really a ministry of truth, is what it is. It's the government recognizing that their control of the media, which they already have through a basic gentleman's agreement with media, with social media giants, to control information, what we hear, what we see, is not enough. So they need to do more. They need to have explicit government control over what we see and hear. And of course, this is very dangerous. This is not something that Catholics should be very excited about. It's interesting that this announcement comes on the heels of Elon Musk potentially buying Twitter, because of course the left and the government is very much upset about the fact that there could actually be free speech on Twitter, on one of the biggest social media platforms. One thing that I think we should ask ourselves: when has disinformation actually had some negative impact upon our country? They talk about all the disinformation out there with COVID, with the election, with Russia, but where are cases of it actually happening? There was a lot of talk about Russiagate, about Russia really using disinformation to affect the 2016 election. That's been found to not be true. There was a lot of worry that disinformation about COVID would cause more people to die and things like that. That wasn't true. In fact, the so-called disinformation about COVID was actual facts about COVID that everybody later admitted. Like, for example, at one point, it was disinformation to say that you might still get COVID even if you have the vaccine, even if you're vaccinated. And now, of course, we all know that's true. Nobody denies that. I don't think YouTube will kick us off for saying that anymore. They would have a year ago, but they're not anymore. And so this whole fear of disinformation is a made-up fear. There is no such problem in our country of disinformation causing some major problems, major crises, people dying or anything like that because of it. This is just an effort for the left to realize they lose arguments when it comes to actually stating them in the public square, and so they have to silence their opposition. In other government news, President Biden has now asked for $33 billion, that's billion with a B, $1 billion to assist Ukraine. Now, he already has twice authorized over $1 billion. He's authorized now over $2 billion to assist Ukraine. He didn't need congressional approval, but now he does to ask for this much. $33 billion. So many people were this week saying, oh, if Elon Musk could do so much more with his $44 billion offer of Twitter than just to buy a social media company. Well, what about this $33 billion supposedly going to Ukraine? First of all, let's be honest. Most of it's probably not going to actually go to Ukraine. It's going to be pork barrel stuff. But it says that he asked Congress for $33 billion to bolster Ukraine's fight against Russia, signaling a burgeoning and long-haul American commitment as Moscow's invasion and the international tensions it has inflamed show no signs of receding. This is from the AP, by the way. The package has about $20 billion in defense spending for Ukraine and U.S. allies in the region, and $8.5 billion to keep Ukrainian President Zelensky's government providing services and paying salaries. There's $3 billion in global food and humanitarian programs, including money to help Ukrainian refugees who fled to the U.S. and to prod American farmers to grow wheat and other crops to replace the vast amounts of food Ukraine normally produces. That last part, the free market would take care of that if you would just let it. I mean, our farmers in this country are already so heavily subsidized and told what they can and can't grow. If there was a need for it and they were just left alone, they would obviously grow the things that are most profitable. But there's so many problems with this. I mean, I can't even begin to start. First of all, it does display, if this passes, it shows how dangerous media manipulation is, because we've been just emotionally manipulated for 2 months now, more than 2 months now, that the greatest crisis in the world today is the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and it's the only thing that's going on in the world. What's going on in Yemen, what's going on in Afghanistan or Syria or anywhere like that doesn't matter compared to this. This is what we have to focus everything on. And I do think there's reason to question the narrative behind what the U.S.'s role in this. The fact is that these are all actions of war, and Russia can't be blamed if they take them as actions of war. When you spend billions and billions of dollars to prop up Ukraine's defense, Ukraine's army against Russia, basically what you're saying is we're willing to fight to the last Ukrainian in order to have our proxy war against Russia. And I just think what this does is it's just another step towards war, actual war with Russia, which is just going to be terrible. It's going to end. There's no winner in an actual war between the U.S. and Russia. And so there should be much more effort for negotiation, for pushing for peace, for diplomacy. Instead, it's just the warmongers have taken over Washington again, as they do every few years. And the neocons are going to lead us to destruction. And then finally, we don't have $33 billion. I mean, we're just making it up at this point. $33 billion. What's interesting that in any number they make up? They're just printing the money, and it's making us go bankrupt. And it's another reason why we have rampant inflation. In other news, Moderna wants to jab your baby. According to AP, Moderna is seeking to be the first to offer COVID-19 vaccine for the youngest American children, as it has asked the Food and Drug Administration to clear low-dose shots for babies, toddlers, and preschoolers. So this is for children younger than 5. Right now, you can get a vax for children 5 and up, but not for younger than 5. And what's interesting about this is that, first of all, there's no evidence that there are serious issues with COVID for kids. It's not that no young people have not had any symptoms or even died maybe from COVID. It's just, it's not really a serious problem for young people. This affects mostly the older people and those with serious health issues, not your average young person. And yet in a lot of places, they're still making young people, these kids, these toddlers wear masks because they can't be vaccinated. What's interesting, though, is that if you look at the details, Moderna said that 2 kid doses, so 2, not just 1, are about 40 to 50% effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19. 40 to 50% is it. How are these even called vaccines at this point? If it's only 40, 50% effective at preventing symptomatic, it's not even, basically, in other words, if you would have gotten the sniffles, if a 3-year-old would have gotten the sniffles from COVID, has a vaccine, there's a 40 to 50% chance he wouldn't get the sniffles. That's what we're saying. And of course, these vaccines are highly experimental. They're new. They don't have a long time of testing. And so I just think it's ridiculous that we're pushing these vaccines on young people. And if you read the articles about it, it's like parents are afraid to have their kids go out because they're not vaccinated yet. They're young people when they really have no danger, and they might even have more danger from the vaccine. Now, I say that, and COVID and YouTube might shut me down for that. I don't know that medically, but we do know medically that there isn't a serious cause for concern for young people to get COVID. And we don't know anything about the vaccine. It looks like it's not even that effective. Now, the National Catholic Bioethics Center sent out a statement yesterday, which was very good, talking about this. And one of the things it said is the NCBC wishes to highlight the higher threshold of therapeutic benefit that must be applied to medical decisions for any persons at greater risk of exploitation, such as children. That's a great point. if I'm, at my age, if I just decide, hey, I want to get a vaccine for something because I've weighed the risk, okay, there's a certain level there. But when people are making decisions for children, young people who can't make decisions for themselves, or pressuring parents to make these decisions for young people who can't make decisions themselves, there is a higher threshold of therapeutic benefit, and a 40 to 50% effectiveness of just not getting the symptoms doesn't seem to me to meet that threshold. They also say research data strongly suggests that children are the demographic group at the lowest risk of harm from COVID-19. And further, the National Catholic Bioethics Center says mandating COVID-19 immunization with the currently available vaccines in the absence of generous medical, conscience, and religious exemptions raises ethical concerns, especially when dealing with young populations. You can say that again. Any mandate of course, I'm opposed to all mandates of these vaccines, but any mandate of the youngest people, children and toddlers, is just unconscionable, and no Catholic should support it. In other news, President Biden has floated the idea of student loan forgiveness again. According to the AP, President Joe Biden said Thursday he's taking a hard look at canceling additional federal student loan debt and will reach a decision within a month. However, Biden signaled in his Thursday remarks that he wouldn't go as far as some activists want, saying $50,000 in debt forgiveness was not under consideration. So it sounds like Biden's going to offer a certain level of debt forgiveness for students. Again, this is money we do not have, because I assume what this means is that the federal government will just simply pay off these debts. So if somebody, let's say they have $20,000 in debt, they'll just get a check for $20,000 and the student have to pay for it. Now, it is true, and as a parent of somebody who's had 4 kids go through college, 1 has graduated, 3 are still in college costs are ridiculous. Now, one of the main reasons they're ridiculous is because of easy access to these loans. Because what happens is a kid who shouldn't be able to get a loan gets a big loan, and they can afford more, and the colleges know that, so they can bump up their prices, because now it's competing a bunch of kids who have $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in loans each year, rather than kids who can only scrounge up maybe $5,000 or $10,000 in a year. And so the colleges know this, they can continue to increase costs. So that's something to remember. But also on the other side, parents and students have to take responsibility here. If you get a loan, you should have to pay it. I shouldn't have to pay for your loan, your decision you made, your bad decision to get a women's studies major and be $100,000 in debt because of it, and you can't get a job, so you can't pay it off. That's not my fault. That's not my problem. Taxpayers shouldn't have to pay it. This is basically a subsidy for the rich, because it's not some working class Joe, a truck driver or something like that, who doesn't have a college education. They don't benefit from this. In fact, they have to pay for this. And so that's just something that's ridiculous. And I do think, though, parents, please do not let your kids get these huge loans. Now, obviously, when they become adults, they might do it anyway, but advise them at the very least. Don't be getting these huge loans out that are just ridiculous to get and will put you behind the 8 ball. Do as much as you can to finish college without these loans. And also, we have to remember college is becoming actually less important, not more important. People act like that if you don't have a college education, you can't get a good job. That might have been true when I was in college 30 years ago, but I don't think it's true anymore. I think I used to be in the computer programming world. Lots of people succeed very well in computer programming without a college degree. Now, there are some fields, of course, you need one, like maybe being a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Like we need more lawyers in the world. But in a lot of fields, you don't need a college education anymore, or you just need maybe a 2-year community college or something like that. So again, though, the government sees a problem and they make it worse. Finally, in some upbeat news, which is good here to end it with, Mass of the Ages episode 2 is coming out this next month. And this is very exciting for those who saw Mass of the Ages, the documentary about the traditional Latin Mass. Episode 1 came out last summer. And it was great. And episode 2 is coming out. What they're going to be doing is they're going to be having screenings in some major cities in Chicago, Dallas, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Front Royal, Virginia, and now Cincinnati. They just announced today it's also going to be in Cincinnati. And they're going to have free screenings at these locations. And then what is going to happen at the end of May, and that's going to be the first 2 weeks of May. At the end of May, then it will be released on YouTube for free. But I would encourage people to go to the screenings if you can. There are going to be panel discussions. I'm going to be at the one in Chicago next week, May 4th. I'm also, since now they're going to be in Cincinnati and I live in Cincinnati, I'll probably try to attend that one as well. That one's not confirmed if I'm going to be able to make it or not. But I have had the chance to see episode 2, and it's excellent. It really is. It's a different take from episode 1. If you saw episode 1, this is very different. Episode 1 was really a matter of let's get people excited about the Latin Mass, to learn about it, to see how awesome it is. Episode 2 is more like, how do we get here? Why did the church change the Mass so radically in 1960s? And what have been the results of that change? And so I'm excited for it to come out. I encourage you to go to one of the screenings if you can. And if you can't, obviously watch it when it comes out at the end of May on YouTube. Okay, everybody, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Until next time, God love you.